So, as we set the stage for this newspaper reading, this happens in June of 1891. There's another video I have called The Wave of Australians, and this is the Australian invasion into America. As one of the premier Australian heavyweights, Frank "Paddy" Slavin, comes over and attempts to fight the very best American heavyweights. And in this event, Frank Slavin is matched up against Jake Kilrain in June of 1891. Frank Slavin has been here for roughly 2 months into the United States as he invaded in from Australia. And this is his third bout as he attempts to continue to level up and face the very best American heavyweights. The Australians had a very new form of training because they came from an academy and they were not self-taught. They used resistance training to strengthen their muscles. They did long road work sessions and they sparred multiple rounds, all with the top people from the academy against each other to help them improve. As Larry Foley felt the key to improvement was done through sparring. And this is one of the Australians' premier as they face one of the best Americans. And one of the great ring battles, June of 1891. Many of these bouts were done for the competitive nature, but this particular bout is done for the extreme ass-kicking that Frank Slavin punishes out to Jake Kilrain, as it's unremarkable the amount of damage that Jake Kilrain sustains in this match, as the Australian invasion goes off perfectly, and Frank Slavin appears very much like Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, as he reportedly stated in the newspapers before the event, "If he dies, he dies," as referring to Jake Kilrain. And very much like Drago, he was almost attempting to kill Kilrain in the ring. As we read the newspaper accounts of one of the premier ass-kickings of all time, as Frank Slavin unleashes the ultimate fury of the Australians as he dishes out one of the premier butt whoopings. Okay, this reading is coming right from the newspaper, the Pittsburgh Post, Wednesday, June 17th, 1891. Horrible-looking objects covered with blood and water. New York, June 16th. The long-discussed and much looked-forward-to contest between Jake Kilrain of Baltimore and Frank Slavin of Australia for a $10,000 purse offered by the Granite Association took place tonight at the clubhouse of the Granite Athletic Association in Hoboken, New Jersey. Slavin was declared winner of the setup after the 9th round. The clubhouse presents a picture of rough isolation planted in the midst of apparently several more or less vacant lots. Is it a structure of unplanned wood having an amphitheater interior with a 24 by 24 ring? Out of the wilds of the wildest west, such a building would be laughed at. The ring was the best-looking thing besides the spectators in the clubhouse. It is well built. The poles were nicely padded with red buoys, and it was carpeted with a tightly stretched covering of canvas painted a reddish color. Tickets were sold for $10 and $20. The latter entitled the holder to a seat on a high wooden chair. It was claimed that the building was capable of holding 2,600 people, and 1,500 tickets were said to have been sold before the doors were opened. Dunn, the referee, was the first of the leading lights of the contest to reach the clubhouse. The seconds of Frank Slavin, Charlie Mitchell, and Ed Stockard, accompanied by their man. Billy Mullen and Mike Cleary escorted Jake Kilrain, were also in the building and in good time. It was not until 11:22 that the two principals shook hands and greeted the impatient murmurs of the crowd that only half filled the building. Frank Slavin wore blue tights and yellow leather boots, and Kilrain wore blue trunks and nothing else. Round 1. Slavin immediately assumed the offense with a rush, and for a minute or so neither man struck a blow. Then Kilrain led with his right, and Slavin countered neatly. A clinch followed, during which Slavin commenced a terrible right-hand pounding of Kilrain's ribs just below the heart. Round 2. Slavin followed the same tactics, catching Kilrain below the heart half a dozen times in succession. Jake then assumed the aggressor and almost knocked Slavin over the ropes. The round ended all in Jake's favor, amid a sense of enthusiasm which caused Slavin to look somewhat surprised. The old sports president, however, looked grave and muttered that Jake would never be able to stand up to those terrible rib roasters. Slavin, dripping with water, which had been poured on him in his corner, sprang lightly to the middle of the ring, but only to receive a right and a left hand from Jake Kilrain. Slavin replied with a pretty slap on Jake's nose, which stung the latter so much that the Baltimorean went for his opponent and again hammered him to the ropes. But this seemed to be the end of Jake's strength, for soon after, Slavin shot out his right like a piston rod, caught Kilrain under the left ear, and the Baltimore boy went down full length like a log. Dazed and almost helpless, his eyes almost closed, but encouraged by the cheers of the audience, he managed to stagger to his feet. But it was painfully evident that his strength was gone. He made a brave rally, however, clinched, and at the breakaway received another terrible knock and blow, which actually fell him to the stage. Slowly, painfully, half insensible, Jake just managed to stagger to his knees, and the gong saved him brilliantly. The betting was now 100-1 on Slavin, with no takers. The men had barely met when down went poor Jake. It was evident of it, and Slavin hit him at will. Blood was pouring from Jake's nose, which was said to be broken, and this, combined with the water on both men's bodies, made them look horrific-looking objects. 4 times did Jake go to the grass in this round, and 4 times he rallied and faced his man gamely, but there was no force in his blows, while Slavin was full of strength and confidence. Right and left-handers were showered upon the Baltimorean, whose one chance of staying out the 11 rounds was by clinching, and in doing so, he was sure to be met with the fearful rib-roasting punishment for which the Australian seemed to be so partial. The round ended with Jake hardly able to ward off a single one of Slavin's blows. All hope for Jake seemed to be gone. Round 5. Jake looked a little better when he came out to time, but his blows had no force, though he landed repeatedly on the Australian's head. Soon another terrible right-hander sent Jake down and nearly put him to sleep. He managed, however, to stagger up and again face the Australian, who was impatient to get in the knockout blow. Once he had Jake in Slavin's corner in a puddle of water and was about to pound him there when referee Dunn interfered and ordered him to let Jake get out of the water. "Leave me alone," cried the Australian, trying to push Jeer to one side, but Jeer insisted, and the gong sounding gave Jake a breath and another lease on life. Slavin and his seconds were not pleased with Mr. Dunn's interference, but the audience applauded vigorously. Well, that's their own fault for putting a bunch of water in the corner. Round 6 began with the usual clinching and Slavin's vigorous efforts to finish knocking out his opponent. With the clinches came those dreadful piston rod body blows, landing beneath Jake's heart. Happily, the latter happened to have picked up a little and landed a neat uppercut beneath Slavin's jaw. Another clinch followed, and Jake's ribs once more suffered severely. Jake seemed almost helplessly, but fought gamely, squarely, pluckily to last out the remaining minutes. He was little more than a chopping block for the Australian, who, had it not been for both men were dripping with water and that hard red leather gloves slipped off the surface, the hit would have finished poor Jake long ago. Round 7. Slavin no longer got in range. Then he went for Jake's ribs with as much visceral as in the first round. After the breakaway, they exchanged a few ineffective long-range blows, which only further demonstrated Jake's helplessness. Blood literally poured down Jake's face and streaked his limbs. Moving the page. Wet gloves alone saved him from not being knocked out. Some good exchanges were given, however, Jake landing one pretty heavily, but that seemed to be a final effort which only made Slavin smile for a moment, all over his blood-streaked face. Slavin, on the clinch, again roasted Jake's ribs, but the Baltimorean was again saved by the friendly gong. He was then almost as weak as a child. The end of round 7. Round 8. Slavin again led with two heavy right-handers, which missed the mark, and Jake went in for a saving clinch. Throughout the round, the referee kept busy separating the men. Jake once landed his left on Slavin's head, but there was no force in the blow, and Slavin, in the clinch which followed, almost shoved in Jake's ribs. The sound of Slavin's blows was actually heard outside the clubhouse as the echoes reverberated. Slavin no longer had any fear of Jake Kilrain whatsoever, and was only angry with himself for not being able to finish off his helpless opponent, who was evidently resolved not to give in until knocked out senseless. This round, in fact, of all the rounds after the second, were composed of clinches, body blows from Slavin, and gallant though useless rallies upon the part of the Baltimorean Jake Kilrain. No one could help but be in sympathy with the man who was dying so pluckily. Round 9, and the last. Jake managed to come to the scratch in pretty good shape, but after Slavin had landed upon him once or twice, he was again a mass of blood. Jake, however, managed to get in 2 good blows on Slavin's head, though there was little force in them. Slavin, on the other hand, was biting as powerfully as ever. Finally, Slavin hit Jake a terrible left-hander on the neck, and Jake went down as if he got shot from a rifle. Still game, Jake slowly and painfully rose, reeled, and the gong sounded, had to be carried to his corner. Dunn gave the fight to Slavin, who forthwith stepped over to his dazed opponent's corner and shook hands with Jake Kilrain, and thus Jake Kilrain practically met his last Waterloo and passed into the ranks of the second-class men. The audience hissed the referee and the decision to stop the bout, but it did not affect Mr. Dunn in the least. He felt sure that Jake was beaten, so ruled in spite of all protest that the fight was over. And Mr. Dunn apparently did his very best to try and save Jake Kilrain's life there. Certainly his blood loss was dramatic, and he was very weak from blood loss, and he was probably nearing death. And the referee humanely ended the bout as Jake Kilrain had no quit in him, and probably would have attempted to come out for the 9th round, because apparently nothing was stopping the guy. He was one of the most courageous efforts in the history of the ring here, as Jake Kilrain appeared completely done after the 3rd round and lasted till the 8th round in one of the biggest ass whoopings in the entire history of boxing here, as Frank Slavin just destroys the top American competitors. And this very version of a Frank Slavin in the Pioneer Tournament would be an absolute force for any boxer to be facing, as it's quite obvious that Frank Slavin is a complete destruction machine, as he systematically just destroyed Jake Kilrain. And every attempt that you made to catch your breath and clinch and get a little bit of rest, Slavin just made you pay mercifully, as he just tattooed Frank's body, Jake Kilrain's body, black and blue with these remarkable body blows that could be heard outside the arena in one of the most amazing ring battles of the year 1891.